The city wakes slowly. Kyoto, 18th century. The sky is still the color of cool ash, and a soft mist floats over the tiled rooftops like it isn't quite ready to leave yet. A rooster somewhere calls out, sounding more sleepy than proud. A second one answers, a little off-beat. Maybe he's still stretching his wings. Down one narrow street, a paper lantern sways gently in the morning breeze. The shop below it is still closed, but the smell of rice porridge already drifts out from a small kitchen somewhere. A wooden bucket creaks as a woman draws water from the communal well. The splash echoes through the lane, joined by the clack-clack of sandals on stone. It's Kyoto's version of an alarm clock: sandals, roosters, and kettle whistles. The city has its own rhythm, a soft one. No one rushes. Even the smoke from the hearths rises slowly, curling upward like it has all the time in the world. Somewhere, a temple bell rings, 1, 2, 3 times, deep and low. The sound rolls across the rooftops, brushing against the quiet houses before fading into the hills. A few streets away, a young boy chases after a stray dog. Both look too happy to care who's supposed to be faster. The boy's laughter bounces down the lane, and behind him, his mother sighs, that universal "I told you to stay clean" sigh that exists in every century. Kyoto, at this hour, feels half asleep. Wooden shutters slide open with a soft scrape, revealing sleepy faces. Merchants hang their Norin curtains, those simple fabric banners that say, "Yes, we're open," without a single word. A few couriers hurry by with parcels, heads bowed, sandals tapping out a steady rhythm. The city stretches its arms, blinks, and begins again. If you could stand in the middle of the street, you'd notice how the houses lean toward each other, narrow and tall, like polite neighbors whispering secrets. Every doorway is a small stage. One woman sweeps fallen leaves, another tends to a small bonsai tree. Even these tiny acts feel like rituals. There's a kind of peace in repetition here. The artisan quarter sits just beyond the busy market streets, quieter, but not silent. This is where Kyoto's heartbeat hides. The smell changes as you walk. One moment you catch freshly split cedar from a carpenter's shop, the next a sharp, sweet hint of lacquer from the bowl maker's house. Someone is already hammering gently, the sounds steady and soft, not angry like modern machines. It's the sound of patience. If you listen closely, you'll notice how each trade has its own music. The brushmaker's shop hums with the rustle of bristles, the weaver's home sighs with the back-and-forth slide of the loom, and somewhere a potter's wheel spins with a lazy whoosh. No conductor needed. They all play in time with the morning. Now, if you happen to peek inside one of these homes, politely, of course, and only in imagination, you'd see that work and home aren't really separate here. A father sands a wooden tray while his child naps a few steps away. A wife prepares breakfast while keeping an eye on a simmering pot of lacquer. Even the cat, curled up by the doorway, probably thinks it's part of the team. Breakfast is simple but comforting. Rice, miso soup, maybe a bit of pickled radish. Steam drifts through the air like a soft ghost. The family eats quietly. They don't need to fill the silence. The crackle of the fire, the scrape of chopsticks, and the occasional sigh of the kettle are enough conversation for now. When the meal is done, the day begins in earnest. Tools are laid out carefully, each one with its own place. A brush never lies sideways. A chisel is wiped clean after every use. These things might seem small, but to an artisan, they're sacred habits. As one old craftsman once said, or maybe muttered, "If your tools sleep in peace, your work will too." Wise words, even if he was probably just trying to sound poetic while avoiding another chore. The apprentices appear one by one, rubbing sleep from their eyes. They bow, murmuring "good morning" to their master. The master barely nods. He's already deep in thought, staring at a half-finished bowl like it just whispered a secret. That's the thing about these artisans. They don't just make things, they listen to them. Outside, the sun begins to peek over the tiled rooftops. The mist lifts, revealing a city now fully awake. Merchants call out soft greetings, delivery boys jog by with baskets, and the air fills with a faint scent of roasted tea. A small group of monks passes through the quarter, their straw hats tilted low. They chant softly as they walk, bowls hanging from their belts. One stops at a workshop doorway. The artisan bows and offers a small coin. No words are exchanged. The gesture alone carries centuries of meaning. It's a beautiful kind of order, not forced, just understood. Everyone knows their place in the pattern, the woodworker shaping, the weaver weaving, the cook stirring, the child laughing. Kyoto doesn't rush, it simply breathes. And yet, beneath all that calm, there's a quiet competition, too. Who polishes lacquer smoother? Whose tea bowls are most elegant? Whose customers praise them most? But the rivalry here is polite, the way one cloud might drift a little faster than another. It keeps everyone humble, and maybe a little motivated to wake up earlier tomorrow. By mid-morning, sunlight pours down the narrow lanes, bouncing off white plaster walls. The shadows of bamboo sway across sliding doors. Cats stretch in the warmth. A young man hurries by with a parcel of silk wrapped in indigo cloth. An old woman pauses by the well, talking to her neighbor about the coming rain. The whole scene feels ordinary, and that's exactly what makes it special. Nothing grand, nothing urgent, just hundreds of small, quiet lives moving in harmony. A city built not by emperors or generals, but by the hands that carve, weave, and polish. When the wind blows from the river, it carries faint notes of incense from a distant temple. A cart rumbles past, wooden wheels squeaking. Somewhere, a dog barks once and then lies down again. The sun climbs higher, and Kyoto begins its slow hum of daily work, that steady music of tools, laughter, and sighs. And as the sound of a hammer echoes down the alley, you can almost hear the centuries between then and now vanish. The city still stands, the rhythm still beats, and though everything has changed, the morning feels just the same. By the time the first cup of tea is poured, Kyoto is fully alive, calm, composed, quietly beautiful. The artisan picks up his brush. The apprentice waits for a nod. The day unfolds, not with noise, but with care. And if you listen closely, under all the soft sounds of the city, you might hear it, the whisper of the old wooden streets, saying the same thing every morning for hundreds of years. Take your time.
If you pause for a moment, you'll notice the difference right away. The rhythm is slower, but steady. This isn't the flashy part of the city, it's the heartbeat. Each lane is its own little world. There's the woodworker's alley, long planks stacked neatly like sleepy soldiers. A few steps away, the dyer's street, with scraps of silk hanging from lines like flags of color. Then the metalworkers, the potters, the brush makers. You could spend a whole day just wandering and still not see the same thing twice. The artisans here don't shout about their work. They don't have to. The creak of their benches, the hush of brushes, and the soft thump of the mallet say enough. One craftsman might spend the morning carving a tea scoop, shaving paper-thin curls from a block of bamboo. Across the street, someone else shapes clay, hands turning it gently, like they're coaxing a secret to life. No one's in a rush. The day feels stretched out, long enough for patience to fit comfortably. Let's step inside one of these workshops. Just imagine sliding open a wooden door and feeling the faint warmth of the hearth. Light filters through paper windows, soft and golden. Dust motes drift lazily in the beams, floating like they've got nowhere else to be. The room smells of wood smoke and camellia oil. Every surface tells a story. Tiny nicks on a workbench, old stains on the tatami, a wall scroll slightly faded from years of sunlight. In the center, an artisan sits cross-legged, wearing a simple indigo robe. His hands move slowly but surely, guiding a knife through a block of cypress. He doesn't glance up much. His eyes follow the blade as if it's alive. Behind him, his apprentice grinds ink, the slow, circular motion almost hypnotic. This is what craft meets life really means. The home is the workshop. The work is the rhythm of the day. There's no punch clock, no off switch, only a natural flow between making, resting, and living. It's easy to think of craftsmanship as something grand, a performance, a show of skill, but here it's quiet and humble. A craftsman's pride isn't in being famous, it's in doing something properly. You might hear an old saying whispered in these streets: "A rushed hand leaves a restless soul in the work." It's not about perfection, it's about calm. The steady kind of calm that lets you work for hours on the same small detail and not feel bored. The kind that makes time itself slow down a little. Sometimes the artisans talk while they work, light chatter about the weather, the price of rice, or whose apprentice accidentally dropped a bowl last week. Laughter slips through the open doors, soft and friendly. Even mistakes become stories here, not disasters. Every few hours, someone steps outside to stretch and pour tea. The cups are mismatched, handmade, each one with a small imperfection, a thumbprint in the glaze, a faint wobble in the rim. But no one minds. Those little flaws make them warmer somehow. You might hear the faint pluck of a shamisen coming from a neighboring house, the player practicing a quiet tune. Birds join in from the rooftops, off-key but enthusiastic. Kyoto's artisan quarter is never silent, but it never shouts. It hums. There's a community here that runs deeper than just neighbors. When one family's kiln cracks, others lend space. When a brushmaker falls ill, another household might take in his apprentice for a while. People help, not because they must, but because that's simply how things work. You'll sometimes see them gather in the evenings, a small group of artisans sitting on wooden stools outside a workshop, sharing rice wine, talking about their day. Not about grand events, just little things. How the wood grain looked especially beautiful today, or how a stubborn pot finally came out right after 10 tries. It's the kind of conversation that doesn't need a conclusion, just a shared moment between tired hands and satisfied hearts. And yet, make no mistake, there's quiet competition here too. If one lacquerer's bowls start catching attention in the market, others notice. They'll study his polish, his technique, not out of jealousy but curiosity. It's like friendly one-upmanship, polite, respectful, but definitely present. In a way, it keeps everyone sharp, even in this calm world. A community where everyone inspires everyone else, quietly pushing the craft forward, one careful stroke at a time. By midday, the quarter is alive with the soft orchestra of creation, the sound of blades whispering through wood, the gentle funk of clay pressed into shape, the rhythmic slide of a loom, and somewhere, always, that slow, patient breathing of people completely absorbed in what they love. The sunlight has shifted now, sliding down the walls, catching the edges of bowls and brushes. The air feels warmer, thicker with the scent of ink and resin. Lunch will come soon. Rice balls, pickled plums, maybe a cup of green tea. But for now, the artisans keep working. Not hurried, not tired, just steady. If you stood there quietly, really quietly, you might realize something. This isn't just about making things. It's about belonging to something bigger. Each piece of pottery, each brush, each bit of fabric connects to the next, like threads in a single tapestry called Kyoto. And when the sun begins to lower and the last strokes of lacquer dry in the fading light, the city hums with quiet satisfaction. A day spent making, not just objects, but meaning. In this small quarter of wooden houses and narrow lanes, every craftsman knows beauty doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers through the grain of wood, the texture of cloth, the curve of a bowl. And if you listen long enough, you can still hear those whispers echoing through Kyoto's streets today. The morning light falls gently through the shoji paper windows, painting thin golden lines across the tatami floor. In the corner, a low workbench waits, smooth from years of use, every groove telling a quiet story. And beside it sits Haru. He's not famous, he's not rich, but in this little part of Kyoto, everyone knows him as the man who can make wood breathe. Haru's hair is streaked with gray, and his hands look older than he does, full of tiny scars, the kind that come from love disguised as labor. He rolls up his sleeves, sits cross-legged, and lets out a small sigh. Not a tired sigh, more like a deep, familiar one, the kind that says, "Here we go again." On the bench lies a half-finished tray. Simple, rounded corners. Not much to look at yet, but Haru can already see what it will become. He runs his fingers along the grain, tracing invisible lines only he seems to understand. He picks up a chisel, sharp enough to whisper through the wood. The first curl falls away, light, delicate, like a shaving of snow. Another follows, and another. Each one lands softly on the floor, joining the quiet pile of yesterday's work. If you close your eyes, the sound is oddly soothing. Scrape, pause, scrape, like the rhythm of steady breathing. Outside, the street is beginning to hum, but in here, time feels thick, like honey.
An apprentice sits nearby, pretending to focus, but sneaking glances at his master every few seconds. His name is Jun, and he's been learning for 2 years now. Still more blisters than skill, but patient. "Don't rush," Haru says without looking up. His voice is low and calm. "Wood remembers when you rush." Jun nods solemnly, as if the wood itself might be listening. He returns to sanding, moving his hand in small circles, slow enough to make a turtle proud. Every once in a while, Haru checks the blade, running his thumb gently along the edge, never too fast. Everyone in this quarter knows at least one fool who lost a fingertip showing off. Tools are everything here. Each one has a name, a memory, a personality. Haru's plane, for example, is older than he is. It came from his father, who carved his own initials on the handle when he was 16. The wood is worn smooth, and it fits Haru's grip like it was meant to. He once said the plane had moods. Some days it glides like silk, other days it sulks like a cat. Jun laughed at that until the day his own chisel slipped 3 times for no reason. Since then, he always greets his tools in the morning with a polite bow, just in case. By mid-morning, sunlight catches on the curls of cedar scattered around the bench. They shine like ribbons, faintly fragrant. Haru leans back, cracks his shoulders, and pours tea. The cup wobbles a little, handmade, of course, and steam drifts lazily upward. Jun joins him. They drink in silence. Kyoto doesn't demand words all the time. Sometimes the quiet says enough. Outside, a crow caws from the rooftop, followed by the chatter of two women passing by with baskets of vegetables. "Good day for drying wood," Haru murmurs. June nods. He doesn't really know what that means yet, but it sounds wise enough. After tea, the rhythm returns. Scrape, tap, brush away the dust. Each motion, practiced, deliberate. There's no rush, because rushing doesn't help, not with wood. It bends when it wants to bend. It dries when it's ready. You learn to wait. That's part of the craft, patience disguised as daily habit. Sometimes a piece of wood has a knot that changes everything. Haru doesn't fight it. He just changes direction, makes it part of the design. "You can't force nature to agree with you," he says, smiling faintly. "You just make peace with it." Around noon, June helps carry finished trays to the back room. The space smells faintly sweet, a mix of sawdust and fresh lacquer. Shelves line the walls, filled with trays, bowls, and boxes in various stages of drying, each one different, but sharing the same quiet elegance. No bright colors, no unnecessary decoration, just smooth curves and the subtle shine of good craftsmanship. A small scroll hangs on the wall behind them. It reads, "Beauty lives in what you almost didn't notice." June doesn't fully get it yet, but every day it makes a little more sense. Lunch is simple: rice balls wrapped in seaweed, pickled plum, and green tea. They eat outside, sitting on the wooden step, watching the sunlight shimmer on the rooftops. A cat wanders by, tail swaying like it owns the place. Haru tosses it a bit of rice. It sniffs, turns away, and leaves. A typical Kyoto cat, polite but unimpressed. "Even cats have standards," June mutters. Haru chuckles softly. "That's Kyoto for you." After lunch, the work continues, slower this time. The afternoon light turns warmer, golden, slipping gently across the walls. The air grows still. The sound of the chisel softens, replaced by the delicate rasp of sandpaper. Haru hums an old tune, barely audible. His movements are slow, precise, like a quiet dance. Each piece he makes carries something of him, his patience, his breath, his years. June watches closely, trying to mirror him. Sometimes he gets it right, sometimes he doesn't. But Haru never scolds, only adjusts June's grip or angle. "You'll get there," he says, smiling. "Just don't look at the clock." As the day fades, Haru applies the first layer of oil to a finished tray. It darkens the wood instantly, bringing the grain to life, thin lines swirling like rivers on a map. He pauses, studying the pattern. Every piece of wood has its own personality, its own quiet story. This one, he decides, looks calm, like morning sunlight on still water. He nods, satisfied. She's done. Yoon house grease, an eyebrow. She? All good work deserves a name, Haru replies. Even trays. Yoon can't tell if he's joking, but by now he's learned not to ask. Evening arrives with the faint sound of temple bells. Haru wipes his tools carefully, one by one, before tucking them away. No tool is ever left dirty or lonely. The room grows dim. Outside, the lanterns along the street flicker to life, glowing softly through the dusk. June sweeps the shavings into a basket, the scent of cedar still fresh in the air. "Tomorrow," Haru says quietly, "we start the big table." June nods, feeling both nervous and excited, the kind of excitement that comes wrapped in patience, the Kyoto kind. The day ends as it began, calm, unhurried, full of small sounds. The brush of cloth on wood, the creak of the floorboards, the sigh of a craftsman finishing his day. And somewhere in that quiet, a thought lingers. In every smooth curve and polished surface, a human heartbeat
still echoes. If you walk northwest from the center of Kyoto, the air starts to hum a little differently. The clack of sandals fades, and a faint rhythm begins to rise, soft, steady, endlessly repeating. Clack, slide, clack, slide. That's the sound of Nishijin. This district has been home to Kyoto's weavers for hundreds of years. The streets here are lined with small wooden houses, most of them looking a little tired but loved, like old family photos. Out front, you might see silk threads hanging from bamboo poles, shining gently in the sunlight like ribbons of morning dew. They shimmer in quiet colors, pale gold, misty blue, the faintest blush of pink. Nothing loud, nothing that would wake the neighbors. Even color here has learned how to whisper. Inside one of these homes, a woman named Sayo begins her day. She ties her hair up with a strip of cloth, wipes her hands on her apron, and bows slightly toward the loom before sitting down. Not to be dramatic, just respectful. The loom itself is older than her. A deep brown frame of polished wood with ropes, pedals, and thin bamboo rods, all connected in ways only she seems to understand. It creaks softly as she settles in, like an old friend stretching its limbs. The first thing she does is adjust the warp threads, the long, tight vertical lines that hold everything together. Each one is carefully placed, tensioned, and checked again. There are hundreds of them, each a single strand of silk thinner than a hair. It's the kind of task that most people makes dizzy just thinking about it, but for Sayo, it's as natural as breathing. When she starts to weave, the whole room seems to exhale. Clack, slide. The shuttle moves left to right, right to left. The silk glides between the warp threads, laying down color so fine it almost disappears. There's a rhythm to it, patient, measured, almost like a lullaby. You could close your eyes and fall asleep to that sound, the way children in Nishijin probably have for generations. Each weaver has their own pace. Some are quick and efficient, others slower and more careful. Sayo's pace is steady, deliberate. She says it keeps her heart calm.
Sometimes her daughter brings her tea, green and a little bitter, perfect for focus. They don't talk much while she works. The loom is already doing the talking. Every so often, Sayo stops to check the pattern. She leans close, her eyes tracing the small shapes forming beneath her hands. Maybe it's the faint outline of a crane, or the gentle curve of a wave. These are old patterns, passed down through books, sketches, and memory. Some designs haven't changed in 200 years. But no two fabrics are ever exactly alike. Silk has moods just like people. One day it's smooth and obedient. Another day it tangles itself just to remind you who's really in charge. When that happens, Sayo sighs, mutters something soft, and untangles it, one thread at a time. There's no rush. That's the golden rule here. Nothing good comes from hurry. By late morning, the room glows softly with filtered sunlight. It hits the silk just right, and for a moment, the threads look alive, like they're breathing. In the distance, other looms join in, their sounds overlapping but never clashing. The whole district becomes one great weaving song, each home contributing its own verse. Clack, slide. Tap, tap, slide. A lullaby made of patience and skill. If you walk these streets and listen long enough, you'll realize Nishijin isn't just a place, it's a living instrument. At midday, Sayo stretches her arms and steps outside. The air smells faintly of dyed silk and roasted barley tea. Neighbors greet each other quietly, some carrying bundles of thread, others rolling bolts of finished fabric to deliver downtown. A few men sit in the shade,
trimming bamboo rods or mending worn-out looms. Someone jokes that his loom is older than he is. Everyone laughs because it's probably true. Children play at the end of the street, chasing each other with scraps of silk, their laughter mixing with the click of looms behind the doors. Even here, surrounded by centuries of craft, life feels simple and ordinary, and maybe that's what makes it beautiful. Sayo's husband returns home carrying a bundle of dyed thread from a nearby workshop. The colors are muted, moss green, earthy brown, and a single spool of gold so fine it gleams even in the shade. They'll save that gold thread for something special, maybe a ceremonial kimono or a temple banner. Using it feels like holding sunlight. "Beautiful," she says softly, running her fingers over it. He shrugs. He says, "Expensive," but his smile gives him away. After lunch, the work resumes. The afternoon light shifts slowly across the tatami, moving from her left hand to her right. The shuttle glides, the threads tighten, and the pattern deepens. Now it's no longer just lines and shapes. It's becoming a story. Every fabric tells one, though most people never notice. Some tell of seasons, plum blossoms in spring, maple leaves in autumn. Others hint at poems or legends. Sayo's current piece shows flowing water, each line of silk bending and curling like a river. It's for a kimono that will be worn once, maybe twice, and then stored away carefully for decades. But that doesn't bother her. She isn't weaving for fame or praise. She's weaving because it feels right. By late afternoon, the rhythm slows. The air is warmer now, heavy with quiet concentration. Outside, the shadows of bamboo leaves flicker against the window screens. Sayo ties off the last thread of the day, smooths the fabric, and runs her palm across it. The silk feels cool and soft, like still water. She smiles, not proud exactly, just content. Her daughter peers over her shoulder. "Is it finished?" "Almost," Sayo says. "A few more inches tomorrow. Good things take time." The girl nods, serious beyond her years. She says, "Like pickles." Sayo laughs softly. "Exactly like pickles." Evening settles slowly over Nishijin. One by one, the looms fall silent. The streets glow with lantern light, and the faint scent of dinner drifts through the air: grilled fish, miso, and warm rice. Sayo covers her loom with a cloth, bows slightly, and blows out the lamp. The threads rest. Tomorrow they'll wake again, ready to sing their quiet, rhythmic song. She steps outside, watching the last of the sunlight fade behind the tiled rooftops. Somewhere, a temple bell rings. The sound rolls through the district, low and soft, like the world exhaling after a long day. And for a moment, all of Nishijin seems to shimmer, not loudly, not proudly, but gently, like the silk it weaves. Morning in Kyoto begins softly in the Kiyomizu Hills. The light arrives not in a rush, but as a gentle spill, slipping through cedar branches and brushing the tiled rooftops of small pottery houses. The air smells faintly of smoke and damp earth. And if you listen closely, beneath the call of distant crows, you can hear a slow, steady rhythm. Whir, tap, scrape. That's the sound of clay being shaped. The potters of Kiyomizu have been at it for centuries. Their homes double as workshops, narrow two-story buildings clinging to the hillside like stubborn ivy. Inside, it's a world of half-finished bowls, small teacups lined up in rows, and shelves that look ready to collapse under the weight of 1,000 ceramic dreams. Our story today begins with Gen, a man in his 60s, whose hands are permanently the color of wet clay. His smile, however, is clean, broad and unhurried. Every morning, Gen starts by checking yesterday's work. He kneels beside a row of pots left to dry overnight and taps them gently with his knuckle. Each one answers back with a faint, hollow tone. It's a kind of conversation only potters understand. "Too soft," he murmurs to one. "Too dry," he tells another. He nods approvingly at the third. "Just right. You may live." He chuckles at his own joke, the kind of small humor that keeps lonely work from turning too quiet. Gen's wife, Aiko, appears in the doorway, carrying a small tray with miso soup and rice. She watches him work for a moment, then says what she says every morning. "Don't forget to eat before you start spinning." He nods, although his hands are already reaching for a lump of clay. The clay comes from the hills nearby, soft, fine-grained, and the color of pale river sand. He slaps it down onto the wheel with a wet thud. The sound echoes through the room, the same sound that probably echoed there since the 1600s. He leans in, elbows resting on his knees, eyes level with the spinning lump. Slowly the shape begins to rise, first a cylinder, then a curve, then a bowl. It's like watching fog take form. The potter's wheel spins at a steady pace, but Gen's hands are slower. He doesn't fight the clay, he just guides it. Each motion is small, careful, and certain. "Clay is like people," he says, almost to himself. "Push too hard, and it'll collapse." When the bowl finally takes shape, he breathes out softly, as if his breath might undo the work. Then comes the trimming, shaving thin curls of clay from the base, adding a small ring for balance, smoothing the rim. If you've ever seen someone write with a fountain pen they've owned for years, it's that same kind of intimacy. Hand, tool, and material, all moving like they share a single thought.
By mid-morning, the workshop smells of earth and smoke. The floor is covered in soft dust that sticks to your socks no matter how careful you are. Outside, birds hop along the low wall, watching curiously. Gen carries his finished bowls to a shelf where dozens of others wait. Some are plain, others painted with faint blue cranes or drifting clouds. He doesn't use bright colors much. "The tea should be the star," he says. Aiko appears again with a sigh. "You're skipping breakfast again." He shrugs. "Tea counts as breakfast." She frowns, then leaves him a rice ball anyway. He'll eat it when she's gone. Probably. Around noon, the kiln master arrives. He's a younger man named Ryo, with hair that looks permanently singed from standing too close to fire. He's here to check the big kiln, a brick tunnel that runs up the slope behind the workshop, shaped like a dragon lying on its belly. They call it Noborigama, the climbing kiln. It's divided into chambers, each one hotter than the last. Firing takes days, sometimes a full week. And once it starts, there's no stopping it. Ryo peers inside one of the small openings, nods, and says, "We'll light it tomorrow morning." Gen nods back. "Good. The weather feels lucky." Ryo laughs. "You say that every time." "Maybe that's why it works," Gen says. In the afternoon, the apprentices arrive. 3 young men with more enthusiasm than balance. They bow deeply, then immediately trip over each other trying to carry a heavy tray of wet clay. Gen doesn't scold them. He just smiles and says, "Careful, the clay remembers who drops it."
They freeze for a second, not sure if he's serious. He's not. Mostly. While they work the wheels in the corner, Gen moves to his favorite task, glazing. He dips a cup into a basin of pale blue glaze, then lifts it out slowly, letting the liquid drip off like honey. The glaze will dry to a dull, chalky color, but once it's fired, it'll shine like still water under moonlight. That transformation from dull to radiant never stops feeling magical, even after 50 years. By sunset, the shelves are full again. The apprentices have gone home, the tools are cleaned, and the soft smell of burning wood drifts through the air. Gen sits on the porch, tea in hand, watching the last light fade over Kyoto's tiled rooftops. He sips quietly. Aiko joins him, folding a cloth over her knees. "Do you ever get tired of clay?" she asks. He thinks about it. "Sometimes my back does, but my hands never." She smiles, shaking her head. "You and that wheel. It's your real marriage." He laughs softly. "Then you must be jealous." "Only a little," she says. Night deepens, and the workshop falls silent. The bowls on the shelves rest like sleeping children, their surfaces catching the faint orange glow from the kiln outside. Tomorrow, the dragon kiln will awake, flames licking through its chambers, heat curling the air. The clay will harden, the glazes will bloom, and the earth itself will turn to art. But for now, all is calm. Gen finishes his tea, brushes clay from his hands, and blows out the lamp. The last thing he hears before sleep is the soft creak of his old wheel, still spinning very slowly, as if dreaming on its own. Morning mist drifts across the temple gardens. The air is cool and smells faintly of pine needles and old paper. Somewhere beyond the mossy walls, a bell rings, soft and distant, like a memory calling your name. Inside a small wooden room, sunlight filters through paper screens and lands in stripes across a low writing desk. A man sits there, perfectly still. His name is Haru, and for most of his life, his only company has been ink, silence, and the whisper of brush on paper. He dips his brush into a shallow inkstone and waits, not to think, but to stop thinking. Because in this quiet world of brushwork and breath, the secret isn't speed or even skill. It's patience. Haru begins each morning by grinding his inkstick on the stone. It's slow, rhythmic work. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The sound of soot and water becoming something more. The smell rises like burnt pine, sharp but somehow comforting. He could buy ready-made ink, of course, but he doesn't. To Haru, ink that isn't earned doesn't listen properly. When the mixture is just right, not too thick, not too thin, he pauses to breathe, then lifts the brush. It hangs in the air for a moment, dripping one dark drop that lands on the page like a heartbeat. And then the lines begin to form. Each stroke is careful, deliberate, some bold, some soft. Each one matters, but none of them last forever. If the hand trembles, the ink tells on you. If the mind wanders, the brush does too. There's a saying among Kyoto's old calligraphers: ink remembers the heart of the writer. It's both a warning and a comfort. So Haru writes slowly. The characters bloom one after another, words from poems,
temple sutras, small fragments of wisdom like "the moon does not rush" or "patience drinks the longest tea." He smiles a little at that last one. He came up with it himself years ago when an apprentice spilled hot tea on his fresh work. The apprentice panicked. Haru just said, "Then we write another moon." Around mid-morning, his friend and fellow monk, Daichi, appears in the doorway. He's round-faced and always smiling, carrying 2 steaming bowls of barley tea. "Are you still chasing perfection?" Daichi teases. "Only chasing my own handwriting," he says. "It keeps changing every year." Daichi laughs. "Maybe that's because you keep changing too." Haru hums softly. "Then I'll stop when I stop changing." Daichi sets the tea beside him. "Then you'll never stop." They share a quiet laugh, the kind that sounds more like exhaling than talking. Outside, the garden glows with green light. A gentle breeze moves through the bamboo grove, and for a moment, the paper on Haru's desk flutters. He places a small paperweight, a carved frog, on top. It's an old gift from an apprentice long gone, and it always makes him smile. He once told that apprentice, "Calligraphy is not about prudy writing. It's about the moment your mind and your hand finally agree on something." That's why he keeps the frog, to remind him not to take the work too seriously. After all, frogs never worry about handwriting. By noon, the floor is scattered with sheets of practice paper. Some are near perfect, others are crooked, smudged, or simply wrong. But Haru doesn't throw them away. He stacks them neatly in a wooden box by the door, a quiet archive of his imperfection. He says it's good to keep your mistakes. They make honest company. Daichi says he's just too sentimental to use the scrap bin. Haru doesn't deny it. Sometimes, travelers come to the temple asking for calligraphy charms, small papers with blessings for health or luck. Haru will never rush those. He'll listen first, nodding slowly, then write with calm intent. A woman once asked for a charm to bring peace to her busy mind. Haru smiled gently and wrote a single character, pause. Then he handed it to her and said, "You already have it." She blinked, puzzled, but she smiled too. In the afternoons, Haru teaches the younger monks. They sit cross-legged in a circle, brushes in hand, inkstones lined up like tiny black lakes. He doesn't say much. Mostly he just watches. When one of them presses too hard, he says softly, "The paper can feel that." When another's lines come out shaky, he says, "The brush only trembles when the mind does." There are no...
After night falls, the temple is quiet except for the wind through the pines. The candles burn low, casting slow-moving shadows across the paper screens. Haru sits one last time at his desk, just looking at the sheets he made. There's no rush, no deadline, no audience, just ink and thought. He closes his eyes and whispers, "Each stroke is today." The sun rises lazily over Kyoto, spilling gold over the tiled rooftops of the Nishijin district. The streets here are quiet, just the sound of wooden sandals on stone and the faint hum of looms waking up for the day. This is where the silk breathes. For over 500 years, the people of Nishijin have been known for their weaving, the kind that doesn't just clothe the body, but somehow dresses the spirit too. It's patient work, delicate as spider silk and as rhythmic as a lullaby. Our story today begins in a workshop that smells of cedar wood, warm dye, and a little bit of history. The windows are small, but sunlight sneaks through the paper screens, landing in soft squares across the tatami floor. At the loom sits Hana, a woman in her 50s with a quiet face and calloused fingers. Her hands move so steadily that you could mistake her for part of the loom itself, another piece of the machinery, moving in perfect time. She's been weaving since she was 12. Her grandmother taught her the way of Nishijin ori, the famous brocade weaving technique that combines hundreds of silk threads into shimmering patterns of flowers, waves, and clouds. If you ask Hana how she learned, she'll shrug and say, "I just listened to the loom." The loom does speak, in a way. It creaks and hums and clicks, a steady wooden heartbeat filling the room. Thok, thok, thok. The sound is hypnotic, the kind of rhythm that makes your mind drift. When Hana was young, she tried to weave fast, racing the shuttle back and forth like a game. Her grandmother would only smile and say, "The cloth will tell you when it's ready." Now, after 40 years, Hana understands. You don't rush silk. You invite it. Each thread is as thin as a whisper. Some are dyed indigo, some crimson, others gold. They rest on spools beside her, lined up like small suns waiting for their turn to shine. She takes one between her fingers and runs it gently over her wrist. She says, "If it doesn't feel kind to the skin, it doesn't belong in the cloth." It's a simple rule, but one that has shaped Nishijin's reputation for centuries. Even in the Edo-Period, Kyoto's merchants would travel for days to buy these fabrics, gifts fit for nobles and brides alike. But here in this little wooden workshop, it's not about luxury. It's about rhythm, breath, and patience. Hana's husband, Koji, works in the next room, preparing the threads. He's a quiet man who hums old folk songs while he works. His task is to stretch the silk, dye it with natural colors, and wind it evenly on the bobbins. He says, "Some people think the weaver does all the beauty, but the thread gets the first say." He holds up a spool of silk dyed in a faded plum tone. "See this? Looks dull now, but under the lamp, it glows like sunset." He grins, proud, then adds softly, "She never says it, but Hana likes this color best." From the next room, Hana calls, "I heard that." Koji chuckles. "Good, I meant you to." At midday, they stop for lunch. Miso soup, pickled radish, and tea. They sit near the open window, where the breeze carries the smell of rain and distant cooking fires. Hana stretches her fingers and sighs, "The threads are stubborn today." Koji nods. "Maybe they're tired, or maybe you are." She smiles. "The threads never get tired. Only people do." They share a quiet laugh, the kind that comes easy after years of shared silence. In the afternoon, Hana begins a new pattern, a simple one, waves on the sea, her grandmother's favorite. She opens a small wooden box that holds the old katagami stencils, paper patterns used for guidance. Some are worn thin, the edges browned with age. She handles them the way some people handle prayer beads. With each line she weaves, the pattern grows, first faint, then clear, waves curling across the silk like they're caught in motion. The sound of the loom deepens, steady and slow. Thok, clack, whir. It's almost like the cloth itself is breathing. As evening approaches, the workshop glows in amber light. Finished fabrics hang over the beams, reds, blues, golds, shimmering softly in the last rays of sun. An apprentice arrives, bowing shyly. She's young, maybe 17, with silk threads tangled in her hair. Hana teaches her gently, showing her how to guide the shuttle, how to sense when the tension is right. Don't fight the loom. If it creaks, it's talking to you. The girl laughs nervously. What if I don't understand what it's saying? Hana smiles. Then just listen longer. When the day finally ends, Koji turns off the lamps one by one. The loom sits silent, like a sleeping animal. The silk glows faintly in the half-light, catching even the moon's pale touch. Hana stands by the doorway, stretching her arms. Her back aches, but her eyes are calm. She looks at the unfinished fabric still on the loom and says softly, "Tomorrow we start the sky." Koji nods. "The sea today, the sky tomorrow. One day you'll weave the whole world." She chuckles. "Maybe, but I'll need a longer loom." Later that night, after the town has gone quiet, the workshop still hums in memory. If you walked past the window, you might swear you hear the faint rhythm of weaving still echoing through the beams. Fok, fok, fok. But it's not the loom. It's just the sound of work that is soaked so deeply into the walls that I forgot how to leave. And maybe, if you listened long enough, you'd hear the whisper of silk threads talking to one another. Soft voices from centuries past, weaving their way into tomorrow. There's a certain kind of morning that only happens in the mountains. The light arrives gently, pale, silvery, soft as rice steam. The air is cool enough to make your breath visible. And if you listen, really listen, you'll hear water, running, whispering, always moving somewhere nearby. That's how it's always been in Echizen, a quiet valley in northern Japan where rivers sing and paper lives. Not just any paper, washi, the handmade kind, as thin as a dragonfly's wing and as strong as memory. Our story begins in a wooden workshop beside a narrow stream. The walls are old, stained with time and the faint scent of pulp. Sunlight filters through open slats, landing in stripes across wooden tubs filled with cloudy water. At one of those tubs stands Yuto, a man with kind eyes and sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His hands move through the water with practiced ease, lifting a wooden frame, swaying it gently back and forth. The water shimmers, catching the light like liquid glass. Slowly, the fibers settle, weaving together into something that looks, for now, like fog. He smiles softly. "Paper is just water learning how to hold its breath," he says. Yuto learned the craft from his father, who learned it from his own father. In Echizen, that's how it's done. The valley has been making paper for more than 1,500 years. Long before machines, long before the noise of modern life, there were just hands, water, and patience. He points to a small altar in the corner, lit with a flickering candle. "That's for Kawakami Gozen," he explains, the goddess of paper. Legend says she appeared to an old papermaker long ago and taught him how to make the first true washi. Every morning, Yuto bows to her before he begins, not out of superstition, but out of gratitude. Without her, he says, we'd still be writing on bark. The process looks simple, but it's a quiet dance of skill and timing. First comes the bark, usually from the kozo or mulberry plant. Yuto soaks it in clear mountain water overnight, then steams it until it softens. After that, he scrapes it by hand to remove any rough bits, then boils it with ash until the fibers turn soft and silky. The workshop smells faintly of wood, smoke, and something sweet, like wet straw after rain. He rinses the fibers again and again in the river until the water runs pure. "You can't rush it," he says. "If the water's angry, the paper will be too." Once the pulp is ready, he mixes it into the tub with neri, a plant-based starch that helps the fibers float evenly. Then he lowers the bamboo frame, sugata, into the mixture, letting it fill, then lifting and swaying it side to side, front to back in slow rhythm. Back and forth, left and right, again and again. With each motion, the water drains away, leaving behind a thin layer of tangled fibers, soft, translucent, and perfect. This is called tsukikake. It's the heart of the craft. When he finishes, Yuto holds the frame up to the light. You can just barely see the shadow of his hand through it. He grins. That's the magic part. It looks like nothing, but soon it'll hold poems, letters, maybe even someone's secrets. His wife Amy walks in carrying a tray with tea. She watches him for a moment and says, "You talk to the paper too much." He laughs. "It listens better than people." She smirks. "Maybe that's why you like it." They share tea by the window, steam rising into the cold air. The sound of the stream outside fills the silence between them, a calm, eternal kind of silence. In the afternoon, Yuto carefully lays each wet sheet on a wooden board to dry. He smooths them with a brush made from deer hair, brushing away any bubbles or wrinkles. The sheets cling to the boards like thin ice, catching light in every curve. Later, he'll hang them in the drying room, a space that smells of wood smoke and sun. The heat is gentle, never too harsh. Paper likes to dry the way people like to wake up, slowly. When each sheet finally peels off, it makes a sound like a sigh, soft, satisfying, final. Visitors sometimes come to watch the process. They're always surprised at how quiet it is. No machines, no rush, no shouting. Just the steady rhythm of the stream and the sound of Yuto's hands moving through water. He lets them try sometimes. A tourist will lift the frame too quickly, and half the pulp will slide right off. Yuto just chuckles and says, "Paper teaches patience, usually the hard way." By sunset, the workshop glows gold. Stacks of finished washi rest on low shelves, each one slightly different, a little thicker, a little rougher, a little more human. That's what makes it real. He picks one up and runs his hand over it. This will end up in someone's book, or a calligrapher's poem, or maybe as a lantern in a festival. You never know. Paper travels further than people. Outside, the stream keeps singing its endless song. The sound blends with the evening cicadas and the distant chime of the temple bell. Emmy lights a small lamp and sets it by the door. "You're still working?" she asks. He nods. "Just one more batch." She shakes her head but smiles. "You always say that." When night falls, the workshop becomes still. Only the soft glow of the lamp remains. Yuto stands by the drying boards, watching the paper turn pale and firm in the lamplight. He brushes off his hands and whispers, "Rest well." The papers glimmer, faintly, almost as if they heard him. And in the quiet, the goddess of paper, or maybe just the wind, sighs through the open door. Outside, the stream keeps whispering its secrets to the moon. Morning comes quietly to Wajima. It rests between forested hills and the sea, wrapped in a faint mist that smells of salt and cedar. When the sun finally peeks through, it glints on hundreds of rooftops and on something even more precious, the deep, glowing red of lacquerware drying in hidden workshops. This is the home of urushi, the ancient art of Japanese lacquer. And here, every bowl, box, or tray carries a secret, a patience that shines through wood. Inside one of these workshops, a man named Haru bends over a small wooden bowl. The air smells faintly of trees, smoke, and something sweetly sharp, the scent of raw lacquer sap. Haru wears cotton gloves, but even then his fingers shine faintly with the sticky substance. He works slowly, brushing the lacquer across the bowl's surface in impossibly thin layers. Each stroke is silent. Each breath is measured. He pauses, leans back, and tilts the bowl toward the light. The surface gleams, not bright, but soft, like a sunset reflected on calm water. "Lacquer doesn't like to be rushed," he says with a small grin. "It's a bit like a cat, ignores you if you push too hard." His apprentice, a young woman named Mio, laughs. "Then you must be very patient, master." He shrugs but smiles. "No, just stubborn." Wajima's lacquer masters are known throughout Japan, maybe even the world, for their perfection. But perfection here doesn't come from wealth or fancy tools. It comes from layers, and not just a few.
Some pieces have up to 100 coats of lacquer, each one applied by hand, each one dried and polished before the next begins. The result? A finish so deep it looks like you could fall into it. Before Haru even touches a brush, though, there's a long road of preparation. It starts with the wood, usually zelkova, sometimes cedar or paulownia, always local, always carefully seasoned. The woodworkers shape it first using chisels that sing softly as they cut. Then comes kokuso, a kind of natural putty made from powdered clay and lacquer used to fill any cracks. Haru smiles as he explains it. Wood has scars too. We just help it heal before we make it beautiful. Once repaired and smoothed, the first layer of lacquer goes on. Thin, invisible, patient. Then another, and another still. Between coats, the pieces rest in a warm, humid chamber called a mudo. It's dark, quiet, and kept at just the right dampness for the lacquer to cure. If it's too dry, the lacquer sulks. Too wet, and it pouts. You have to make it comfortable, like an old friend. Mio's job is polishing. She sits by the window, rubbing each piece gently with charcoal and oil, revealing the hidden glow beneath. Her hands move in small, slow circles, and over time, the dull brown surface begins to shine, a deep, liquid red. She looks up, smiling. It's like the wood is breathing again. Haru nods. Exactly. The lacquer is the skin, the polish brings the soul.
Outside, the rhythm of the town continues. You can hear faint hammering, the chirp of birds, and the distant call of a fisherman's bell. Every house here has some tie to lacquer, carving, coating, polishing, decorating. In the evenings, when the sun sets over the sea, the light turns everything gold and red, like the inside of a lacquer bowl. The people joke that even the sky wants to be Wajima lacquer when it grows up. In one corner of the workshop stands an older woman named Aya, Haru's wife. Her task is ukiyo-e, the art of decorating lacquerware with gold or silver dust. Her hands are steady, her brush as fine as a whisper. She dips the tip into gold powder and draws a line thinner than a hair across a small tray. Slowly, a pattern of waves appears, swirling and shimmering. "Do you ever sneeze?" Mio asks, wide-eyed. Aya laughs softly. "Once, and I still find gold dust in that room." They all work together in comfortable silence for a while. The only sound is the soft brushing of lacquer and the occasional sigh of the sea wind outside. When the sun dips low, Haru sets his brush down and looks at the shelves, rows upon rows of finished bowls, trays, and cups, each one glowing quietly in the half-light. He picks up one bowl, turning it gently in his hands. The surface reflects his face, faintly, not sharply, but warmly, as if the bowl remembers him. He smiles. "This one's good. Maybe my best today." Aya glances over, pretending to squint. You said that yesterday, too." He chuckles. "Then I'm improving slowly." Later they sit by the hearth, sipping tea from their own lacquer cups. Mio watches how the light dances across the rim of hers. "I never knew something so simple could look so alive," she says softly. Haru nods. "That's because it is alive. Lacquer is sap. Wood is tree. Even after we cut it, they remember where they came from." He looks toward the forested hills outside. "We're just the caretakers of that memory." When night falls, the workshop glows with lamplight. The scent of cedar and warm lacquer lingers in the air, rich, earthy, comforting. Haru tidies his tools, brushes lined neatly in a row. Mio wipes her hands on a cloth, yawning quietly. Aya covers the gold powder jars like tucking children into bed. Before leaving, Haru bows slightly to the shelves of finished work. It's a small gesture, almost imperceptible, part habit, part reverence. "These bowls," he murmurs, "will outlive us all." Outside, the wind rustles through the cedar trees, the sea sighs softly in the distance, and in the stillness of the workshop, dozens of lacquered surfaces shimmer faintly in the dark, reflecting not just the lamplight, but centuries of patience and care. In the quiet backstreets of Kyoto, far from the temples and tea houses, there's a neighborhood that hums like a beehive made of thread. It's Nishijin, the home of Japan's silk weaving tradition, where looms have sung for over 1,000 years. If you walk there in the early morning, you'll hear it, the faint clack, clack, clack of wooden looms echoing between narrow alleys. It's not loud, but steady, like a heartbeat beneath the city. Inside one of those houses, an old wooden door creaks open. The smell of warm rice and dyed silk greets you before you even step inside. This is the home of the Nakamura family, 3 generations of silk weavers, each one keeping the rhythm of Nishijin alive. The room is dimly lit, the air soft with dust and color. Rolls of silk are stacked neatly in the corners, their hues ranging from cloud white to plum red and gentle gold. At the center, a man named Toshi bends over a loom that looks older than him, maybe older than his grandfather. His hands move with quiet certainty, pressing the pedals, shifting the shuttles, pulling threads across the warp. Each motion adds a tiny piece of a pattern that will take weeks, maybe months to complete. His wife Hana brings him tea. "You've been at it since dawn," she says softly. Toshi nods but doesn't stop weaving. "The thread's behaving today. Better not make it angry." Hana chuckles. "You talk to silk more kindly than you talk to me." He grins faintly, because silk listens. Weaving in Nishijin is not a job, it's a rhythm that fills the day from sunrise until the lamps are lit. Each weaver sits for hours, guiding hundreds of threads, silk, gold, silver, into intricate designs that seem to shimmer even in the shadows. And these are not just any patterns. They carry centuries of meaning. Chrysanthemums for longevity, cranes for good fortune, flowing water for peace. When you see a Nishijin obi wrapped around a kimono, you're looking at a quiet conversation between generations. The process begins long before the loom. Upstairs, Hana and her daughter Emi sort through bundles of raw silk. The threads are so fine they glint like strands of moonlight. Hana dips her fingers into the soft pile and smiles. "You can tell good silk by touch. It should feel like cool water." Next comes the dyeing. Pots of color bubble gently in the back courtyard. Safflower for red, indigo for blue, gardenia for yellow. The colors are never harsh, always soft, always calm, like they belong to the fabric of the air itself. Emi, who's only 19, loves the dyeing stage best. "It's like cooking," she says, "except the meal is for the eyes." She stirs the indigo vat with a bamboo stick, watching the liquid shift from green to blue as the air hits it. When she pulls out a skein of silk, it glows faintly, not the flat blue of paint, but the deep living blue that changes with the light. She hangs it to dry in the sun, and for a moment, the courtyard looks like a garden of floating ribbons. Back inside, Toshi's loom sings its slow rhythm. He works from a pattern sheet pinned beside him, lines of symbols and numbers that only he can read. Each mark tells him when to raise a thread, when to shift a color, when to pause. 1,000 tiny decisions repeated with care. Sometimes he hums quietly to himself an old folk tune that his father used to sing while weaving. "Helps the rhythm," he explains. "The thread likes music." As the afternoon approaches, a neighbor drops by. Another weaver named Daichi, carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. "Trade?" he asks with a grin. Toshi nods. The 2 men swap silk samples, each admiring the other's work.
Daichi's piece is gold-threaded, shimmering like sunlight through honey. "You've outdone yourself," Toshi says. Daichi laughs. "It only took me 3 weeks and a few new gray hairs." They share tea and stories while the looms rest for a while. Outside, the sound of other workshops drifts through the street. Hundreds of looms, hundreds of weavers, all moving to the same invisible rhythm. As evening falls, Hana lights a small oil lamp. Its glow turns the silk's colors even warmer. Red deepens, gold softens, blue melts into violet. Emmy runs her hand gently across a finished fabric. "It looks alive," she whispers. "It is," Hana replies. "Silk remembers every hand that touched it." That's something the people of Nishijin often say, that the fabric holds the memory of its makers. Each thread is not just color and texture, but time itself, the slow, patient time of human hands.
After dinner, the family sits together near the loom. Toshi threads a new warp, while Hana winds the shuttles. Emmy sketches a pattern in her notebook, a design of rippling water and falling leaves. Her father glances over. "That's good," he says softly. "Peaceful, like Kyoto in autumn." She smiles. "Maybe one day you'll weave it for me." "Maybe," he replies, eyes crinkling. "If my back survives another year." Later that night, when the lamps are out and the looms are still, Nishijin falls into a deep silence. But if you listen closely, you can almost hear the faint whisper of threads. Silk brushing against silk, carrying the day's stories through the dark. Some say the looms never truly sleep. They dream of patterns, of colors, of the hands that guide them. And by morning, when the sun rises again over Kyoto's tiled rooftops, the city begins its gentle rhythm once more. Clack, clack, clack. The heartbeat of Nishijin continues. Morning arrives softly on the slopes of Higashiyama. The streets are still wet from last night's rain, and the air smells faintly of earth and smoke. Birds call from the tiled rooftops as the first shop shutters creak open. Somewhere above the city, a thin column of smoke curls lazily into the sky. That's where the potters of Kiyomizu live and work, high above Kyoto, where the air feels cooler and the clay runs deep beneath the ground. If you wander up the narrow lanes toward Kiyomizu Temple, you'll hear it before you see it. The slow, rhythmic hum of a potter's wheel turning. The sound blends with the murmuring of a stream, the chatter of sparrows, and the soft rustle of trees. It feels less like work and more like listening to time itself. Inside one small studio, an old man named Ryo sits at his wheel. His hands are dark with clay, his sleeves rolled up to the elbow. A faint smile plays on his face as he shapes a lump of earth into something graceful. He doesn't look at the wheel. He doesn't need to. His hands already know what to do. On a wooden shelf behind him, dozens of pots and bowls wait, some glazed, some bare, some cracked just slightly as if sighing from their last firing. The room smells of ash, smoke, and river mud. "Clay's a stubborn friend," Ryo says, still shaping the bowl. "Push it too hard and it sulks. Go too soft and it collapses. You have to find its mood each day." His apprentice, Naoko, watches carefully, trying to copy his movements. Her wheel spins too fast at first, splattering bits of clay across her sleeves. She groans. Ryo chuckles. "Don't fight it. Let the wheel do the talking." She slows down, breath steadying. The clay starts to rise, smooth and steady under her hands. "There," he says softly. "Now you're listening." The potters of Kiyomizu have worked like this for centuries. The craft came to Kyoto in the 1600s, carried by families who believed that beauty lived in simple things,
a tea bowl, a vase, a small cup that fits perfectly in your hands. Their clay is dug from the hills nearby, rich and red-brown, full of life. They call it Kyoto skin. When mixed with water and kneaded, it becomes soft and cool, a little like wet bread dough. Naoko laughs as she presses her thumbs into it. "Feels like it's breathing," she says. Reo nods. "Maybe it is. Everything in this room came from the ground. The wheel, the kiln, the tools, even us." Later, they prepare for firing. In the courtyard stands the noborigama, a climbing kiln made of brick and stone built into the hillside like a sleeping dragon. It has several chambers, each one rising higher than the last, connected by flues and arches. Reo brushes his hand across its warm surface. "This old thing's been with me for 40 years, he says fondly. "Never complained once, though it eats firewood like a hungry bear." Naoko giggles. "You talk about it like a pet." He shrugs. "If you feed it right, it rewards you. If not, it sulks and cracks your pots." As evening falls, they begin loading the kiln. Each piece is placed carefully on a bed of sand and fireproof clay. The shelves inside look like a miniature city. Towers of cups, bowls, vases, all waiting quietly in the half-light. When the kiln is full, Reo seals the opening with bricks and clay. He lights the first fire, and the room fills with the deep woody scent of cedar smoke. The flames lick upwards, slow and patient. For the next 2 days and nights, they'll take turns feeding the fire, one tending it while the other sleeps nearby on a mat. By the second night, the heat is fierce. The kiln glows from within, the air shimmering like summer haze. Naoko wipes sweat from her brow, eyes wide with exhaustion and awe. "How do you know when it's ready?" she asks. Reo peers through a tiny hole in the wall where the fire roars brightest. "You look for the right color. Not too red, not too white. Something in between, like the sky just before dawn." When the firing is finally done, the kiln is left to cool for a full day. The silence afterwards feels heavy, almost sacred. The courtyard smells faintly of charcoal and rain. When they open the chamber, it's like unveiling a treasure trove. The pottery glows softly in the dim light. Earthy reds, muted creams, and pale grays. Some pieces have tiny, beautiful imperfections. A faint drip of glaze, a small scar where the flame kissed too hard. Reo smiles, picking up a bowl with a warped rim. "Ah, my favorite," he says. Naoko frowns. "But it's crooked." He nods. "Exactly. It's alive." The idea of imperfection, wabi-sabi, is woven deeply into Kiyomizu pottery. The beauty lies not in perfect symmetry, but in what feels natural, human, fleeting. A bowl that's been used for years with a crack mended by gold. A teacup that leans just slightly as if it's listening when you speak. Each piece carries the story of fire, hands, and time. Reo puts the warped bowl aside gently. "This one," he says, "will make someone's tea taste better. You'll see." In the late afternoon, they bring the finished pottery down to the small shop below the temple steps. Tourists wander by, drawn in by the glint of glazed colors and the earthy smell of clay. Naoko arranges the bowls in neat rows, but Reo rearranges them again. "They need to breathe," he mutters, spacing them farther apart. "Clay doesn't like crowds either?" she teases. He grins. "No one does." When night comes, the workshop is quiet again. The fire in the kiln has gone out, leaving a faint warmth that lingers in the walls. Reo washes his hands in a basin outside, the clay swirling away like old memories. He looks up toward the temple on the hill, glowing softly under the moonlight. "People come here to pray for beauty," he says quietly.
But I think beauty's already hiding in the mud. We just have to listen long enough to find it. The wind rustles through the bamboo. The scent of earth and smoke hangs in the air. And somewhere in the shadows, the kiln gives a soft, tired sigh, as if dreaming of the next fire. The morning light in Edo creeps slowly down narrow alleys, sliding across tiled roofs and dripping eaves until it reaches the small workshops hidden behind the bustle. The air hums with life. Vendors calling, roosters crowing, the soft splash of water from buckets being poured down stone drains. And then beneath it all comes another sound, steady, deep, and ancient. The ringing of hammer on iron. It's not loud, not like a shout,
More like a heartbeat. Clang, pause, clang, echoing through the maze of wooden homes. This is the world of Edo's blacksmiths. Men and women who work not with brush or silk or clay, but with fire, metal, and patience. Down one of the alleys, past a row of shops selling paper lanterns, stands a modest forge. Its walls are stained with smoke, its roof patched with care. Inside, a man named Genzo works beside a glowing fire. He's not young anymore. His beard has gone mostly white, but his arms are still strong, and his movements are deliberate, almost meditative. He lifts a strip of glowing steel from the coals with long tongs, lays it on the anvil, and brings his hammer down with a calm, rhythmic motion. Clang, clang, clang. Each strike sings in the air like a temple bell. Beside him, his apprentice, Koji, fans the fire with a long bamboo bellows. Sparks leap into the dim air, glowing like fireflies before fading. Sweat beads on his forehead, but he smiles as he works. The forge is hot, noisy, and smells faintly of ash and oil, but it feels alive. "Master," Koji says between breaths, "how do you know when the iron is ready?" Genzo doesn't look up. "When it tells you," he says simply. Koji blinks. "Tells me?" Genzo smiles faintly. "It changes color. It changes sound. You'll see. You just have to listen long enough." The blacksmith's trade is one of rhythm and patience. The tools they make, knives, chisels, sickles, and swords, all begin as rough blocks of metal, stubborn and cold. Through heat and hammer, they're given shape. Through repetition, they're given purpose. Some days are for making fine tools for carpenters. Others are for repairing old blades. Once in a while, a samurai visits, polite but stern, to have a sword reforged or polished. But mostly, Genzo makes the humble things: kitchen knives, garden shears, cooking pots. He says they serve people longer than swords ever will. At midday, the street outside fills with the scent of grilled fish and miso soup. The forge grows quiet for a moment, as Genzo and Koji sit near the open doorway, eating rice balls wrapped in paper. Koji studies his master's hands, the calluses, the dark lines of soot that never quite wash off. "Do you ever get tired of it?" he asks. Genzo chews thoughtfully. "Of what?" "Of doing the same thing every day, hammering, folding, shaping." The old man chuckles softly. "You think the fire ever gets tired of burning?" Koji laughs. "Maybe sometimes." "Then maybe it rests in the ashes, and when the bellows wake it up, it's happy again." After lunch, the work resumes. The forge hums, the hammer sings. Koji takes his turn at shaping the metal, his strikes uncertain but eager. The steel bends slightly off-center, and he winces. Genzo steps closer, adjusts his grip, and guides his hands. "Don't fight it," he murmurs. "Flow with it. The hammer isn't there to punish the metal. It's there to teach it." Koji steadies his breath, slows down, and finds the rhythm again. The next few strikes are cleaner, sharper, almost graceful. Better, Genzo says. Now it's learning your patience. On a shelf by the wall, finished tools gleam faintly in the afternoon light. Blades wrapped in paper, handles polished smooth by hand. Each one bears the faint stamp of Genzo's family crest, a tiny wave carved generations ago by his grandfather. Why a wave? Koji once asked him. Genzo smiled, because even steel must remember water. Without it, it's just stone. Outside, rain begins to fall, the soft, steady kind that cools the air and fills the gutters with silver ripples. The forge's heat turns it into steam, wrapping the workshop in a gentle haze. Koji watches the raindrops dance off the roof and sighs. Feels nice, he says. Genzo nods. Rain sharpens the sound of the hammer. Listen. They both pause. The hammer strikes again. Clang. 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 Softer now, almost musical. It sounds like the rain itself is joined in. By dusk, the day's work is done. Genzo quenches the last piece in water, the iron hissing like a sigh. He sets it aside and wipes his brow. Koji peers into the basin, watching the faint ripples fade. So, is that it? It's finished? Genzo shakes his head. Not yet. The metal will rest tonight. It needs to cool slowly. Tomorrow we polish. A good blade sleeps before it shines. As night falls, the streets of Edo grow quiet. Lanterns flicker outside the workshop, their glow reflecting off wet cobblestones. Genzo closes the forge door halfway, leaving it open just enough to let the smoke drift out. The air smells faintly sweet, iron, pine wood, and a hint of rain. He sits down beside the anvil, stretching his sore shoulders. Koji pours tea into 2 chipped cups. The fire has dimmed to embers, glowing softly in the dark. You know, Genzo says after a long pause, iron is a bit like people. Koji raises an eyebrow. How so? Too much heat, and it breaks. Too little, and it stays hard and cold. The trick is finding the middle, where it's strong, but still kind. Koji smiles quietly. Is that what you found? Genzo chuckles. Still working on it. The night deepens. Outside, the rain slows to a drizzle. Somewhere in the distance, another hammer rings faintly, a reminder that across Edo, other blacksmiths are still awake, feeding their fires, shaping the world one spark at a time. In the workshop, the coals fade to black. The sound of the hammer rests, but its echo lingers, in the tools, in the walls, in the steady heartbeat of a city built by hands. And as the last light flickers out, the forge breathes a final sigh, content, warm, and waiting for tomorrow. Night in Edo was never truly dark. Even long after the shop shutters closed and the streets grew quiet, there were still lights. Paper lanterns swaying softly in the breeze, glowing like floating moons above the wooden bridges. And under those painted lanterns, in narrow rooms that smelled faintly of ink and pine, another world was always awake, the world of the printmakers. If you walk down one of those lantern-lit alleys, you might hear a faint sound. Not the hammering of metal, not the chatter of merchants, something gentler. A dry, whispering rhythm. Shh, tap. Shh, tap. That's the sound of a print block meeting paper. Inside a small workshop, 3 people sit on the floor around a low table. A pot of ink, brushes, a stack of washi paper, and carved wooden blocks are spread before them like a quiet ritual. The air feels still, but alive, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath, waiting for the image to appear. The master of this workshop is Haruko. She's small, with sharp eyes and fingers that move like wind over water. Her kimono sleeves are tied back so they won't dip into the ink, and a faint smudge of black sits on her cheek. She's been doing this since she was 12, carving and printing, breathing life into wood and paper. Her hands don't shake, her concentration never falters. As she presses the damp paper against the block, she murmurs softly, "The paper listens to the wood. Always listen."
Her apprentice, Nobu, sits opposite her, frowning at a half-finished print. He's trying to ink a block of cherry wood carved with the outline of a river scene, a few boats, a curved bridge, and 2 tiny fishermen in the distance. But his brush leaves streaks too thick. The lines blur when he prints. He sighs in frustration. Haruko doesn't look up. "Too much ink," she says. "I barely used any." "Then the brush used it for you," she replies calmly. Nobu stares at his print, a watery mess of smudged outlines, and groans, "It hates me." "The wood doesn't hate you," Haruko says, smiling faintly. "It just doesn't trust you yet." In another corner, Ada, the color specialist, is grinding pigments in a small bowl. Each color has a story: red from safflower petals, blue from indigo leaves, yellow from gardenia. The sound of grinding, soft and circular, fills the room like a lullaby. When the mix is perfect, Ada tests it by dipping a fingertip into the bowl and touching the rim of paper. A gentle hue blooms outward like sunrise over mist. He grins. "This one's ready," he says. Haruko leans over to look. "That's the sea color?" "No," he says proudly. "The sky before rain." She nods approvingly. "Good. The sky's more honest." Together they begin the slow, rhythmic dance of multi-block printing. One for outlines, one for blue, one for red, one for green. Each sheet of paper passes through many hands, many breaths. A single mistake, a slip of color, a crooked alignment, means starting over. Yet no one complains. There's a kind of peace in the repetition. In a world that moves quickly outside, here everything happens in quiet patience. At the back of the room, the finished prints are hung on a line to dry. Dozens of scenes sway gently in the lantern light. Mountain paths, tea houses, city bridges, courtesans laughing under umbrellas, cats sleeping on rooftops. Little slices of Edo, frozen forever in ink. A customer once asked Haruko why she chose to print ordinary scenes instead of famous battles or heroic tales. She'd smiled and said, "Because life is the art. People just forget to notice it." By midday, the air grows warm and thick with the smell of oil and ink. Nobu fans himself with a scrap of paper. "Why can't we print in winter?" he grumbles. "It's too hot for art." Eita laughs. "You'd complain if it snowed too. I'd just print snow scenes instead." Haruko keeps working, her hands never slowing. "Then you should hurry and finish this one before summer ends. Otherwise, your fishermen will freeze halfway through next season." Nobu sighs, but smiles. "Yes, master." Outside, a vendor calls out, selling sweet dumplings on sticks. Haruko's cat, Sora, slinks in through the open window, tail high, and curls up beside the drying prints. Eita shoos her away. "You'll leave fur on the sky again." "She's an artist, too," Haruko says. "She just prefers her own medium." "Sleeping," Nobu jokes. "Yes, she's mastered it." Later in the afternoon, a visitor arrives, a bookseller from the city's market district. He bows politely and spreads a few coins on the table. "The new prints are popular," he says, "especially the one of the bridge at dawn." Haruko bows slightly. "I'm glad people see the morning the way I do." He looks at the fresh prints drying. "And this one? The sky looks heavier." Eita beams. "That's the sky before rain." The bookseller nods slowly. "Ah, I see. The kind that smells like summer." Haruko just smiles. "Exactly." When evening comes, the workshop grows quiet again. The lanterns outside glow brighter, painting the paper walls with warm circles of light. Haruko tidies her brushes, covers the pigment bowls, and lays the drying prints neatly aside.
Nobu stretches his stiff arms. Do you ever think these prints will last after we're gone? Haruko looks around the room. The tools, the colors, the faint smell of ink that never really leaves. They'll outlive us, she says softly. But that's not the point. What matters is that they were here now, that someone looked at them and smiled, even for a moment. Outside, a light drizzle begins to fall. The sound of rain against the roof mixes with the fading rustle of brushes being cleaned. In the dim light, the last sheet on the line flutters gently, an image of Kyoto's riverbanks glowing beneath lanterns, just like the ones hanging outside. The world inside the print and the world outside blur together for a moment. It's hard to tell where the ink ends and the real sky begins. Haruko blows out the lamp. The workshop fades into darkness, but the prints, still damp, still glowing faintly with color, seem to hold their own light. The city sleeps, the lanterns sway, and under their soft painted glow, the printmakers of Edo dream of rivers, skies, and moments worth remembering. If you wander through the narrow streets of Kyoto before sunrise, you might hear a sound that's older than the city itself. It's faint at first, a steady clack, shh, clack, shh. The voice of a loom talking to the dawn. Follow that rhythm and it will lead you to Nishijin, a quiet district that has, for centuries, been home to Kyoto's silk weavers, patient artists who turn shimmering thread into stories. The workshops here aren't grand or noisy. They look like ordinary wooden houses, their tiled roofs dark with age, their gardens small but neat. Inside, the air smells faintly of boiled cocoons, pine smoke, and the faint sweetness of polished wood. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it again. Clack, shh, clack, shh. Dozens of looms whispering together, weaving dreams one thread at a time. The weaver we'll meet today is Ayame. She's in her 59, with silver hair that she keeps tied in a bun, and eyes that seem to see everything. Every color, every thread, every tiny mistake before it even happens. Her hands never stop moving. Even when she pauses to sip tea, her fingers twitch lightly, as if still guiding the shuttle across the loom. Her workshop is simple: a wooden frame loom in the center, a bucket of silkworm cocoons by the door, and rolls of finished fabric hanging along the walls. Sunlight slips in through a paper window and lands on the silk, making it shimmer like water. When Ayame was a child, her grandmother told her that silk came from moonlight. She wasn't wrong, she laughs quietly. When you see it glow, you'll understand. She picks up a single thread between her fingers, so fine it's almost invisible. This one came from a cocoon smaller than my thumb, she says softly. Thousands of lives to make one roll of cloth. She sets the shuttle in motion. Clack, shh, clack, shh. Each movement seems small, but the pattern grows slowly. A gentle wave, a line of blossoms, a glint of gold thread that catches the light like sunlight on water. Across the street, her neighbor Taro works on another loom. He's younger, full of energy, maybe too much. Every time his shuttle flies, it bangs loudly. Ayame chuckles. He weaves like he's chasing the thread. Taro calls back through the open window, I'm racing the clouds, not the thread. Then the clouds will win, she says, smiling. He grins, but slows down a little bit after that. In Nishijin, the weavers tease each other the way fishermen do. Quietly, fondly, as if they've known each other across lifetimes.
Before the weaving even begins, there's the preparation, a long, delicate process that few outsiders ever see. Silkworms feed for weeks on mulberry leaves until their cocoons are ready. Then the women boil the cocoons gently to soften the fibers and unwind the silk, threads so fine it must be twisted together hundreds of times to make it strong enough to weave. The air fills with soft steam and the faint scent of mulberry. Every strand is washed, dried, and dyed with natural colors: indigo, madder red, chrysanthemum yellow. It's not fast work, but Ayama shrugs. If you hurry silk, she says, it loses its song. Once the threads are ready, they're stretched across the loom, hundreds of them in perfect order. It's said that a skilled weaver can read the pattern just by touch. Ayama closes her eyes sometimes as she works, her hands moving like they've memorized the air. She hums softly, an old song her mother used to sing while weaving. The sound mingles with the rhythm of the loom until you can't tell where the music ends and the work begins. Outside, children run past laughing. But inside the workshop, time feels different, slower, warmer, and strangely eternal. A visitor once asked Ayama, "How long does it take to make one roll of kimono silk?" She smiled. "It depends on the thread's mood." He laughed, thinking she was joking. But she wasn't. "Some days," she said, "the threads move easily. Other days, they tangle. You can't rush them. You just wait until they're ready to become fabric." In the afternoon, her daughter Kana joins her, carrying a small tray of sweets and tea. They sit together for a moment, sipping quietly. Kana asked, "Mother, do you ever get tired of weaving?" Ayame looked at the loom, the silk stretched across it like captured moonlight. "Tired?" she said softly. "Sometimes my hands ache, but never my heart." She reaches out and runs her fingers gently along the cloth. "Every piece is different. Every one has a secret. When I finish, I always wonder who will wear it, and if they'll feel how much time lives inside it." By evening, the light grows golden and the shadows long. Taro stops his loom and stretches with a loud groan. "Done for today!" he calls across the lane. Ayama smiles without looking up. "Your pattern's crooked again." He freezes. "You didn't even look." "I didn't have to," she says with a wink. Kana giggles quietly. This is Nishijin, a place where teasing and tradition share the same roof, and even laughter moves at the rhythm of the loom. When night finally comes, the district falls into a calm silence. Lanterns glow softly outside, reflecting off the silk draped across the beams. Ayama ties the last thread, folds the finished fabric carefully, and places it in a wooden chest. She bows slightly toward the loom, a small private gesture of thanks. In her world, even tools have spirits. She slides open the window and lets the night air in. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell rings. Ayama closes her eyes and listens, not to the bell, but to the silence after it. That's when she swears she can hear the silk itself, whispering softly, like the wind brushing against water. Tomorrow the threads will sing again. The looms will start their soft rhythm, and in every corner of Nishijin, men and women will keep weaving moonlight into cloth as they have for hundreds of years. Because in Kyoto, some arts never sleep. They just dream between the hours. The morning light over Kyoto is pale and kind. It drifts slowly down tiled rooftops, across narrow streets, and over the wooden beams of old houses that have seen centuries pass like quiet breaths. The city wakes gently, as if it knows not to disturb the dreams still resting in its corners. In those corners, though the tools are quieter now, the spirit of the artisans lingers in the faint scent of ink, the glint of silk, the whisper of a brush against paper. Everywhere you can still feel them, the forgotten hands that shaped beauty from ordinary life. A few of their workshops still stand, tucked between cafes and small stores. You might pass by without noticing. A plain door, a worn sign, maybe a small bell that jingles softly when the wind blows. But if you step inside, the air feels different, older somehow, like a pause in time. There's always something left behind, a tool, a print, a roll of cloth, a half-finished carving. Each one hums faintly with memory, as if the craftsman only stepped out for tea and will return any minute. The world has changed, of course. The old alleys are now lined with power lines and vending machines. The looms that once filled Nishijin streets have been replaced by quiet studios or museums. And yet, the heart of it all hasn't gone. Because even in today's Kyoto, people still live close to their craft. The barista polishing her cup until it gleams, the gardener trimming moss into neat green clouds, the calligrapher practicing a single stroke over and over until it feels just right. That's the same patience, the same rhythm, the same devotion the Edo artisans carried in their bones. If you listen carefully, you might hear echoes of them in the city's hum. The soft clack of a modern printing press sounds a little bit like Haruko's wooden block meeting paper. The whir of a sewing machine resembles Ayama's loom talking to the morning air. Even the brush of feet on tatami, quiet, measured, and respectful, carries that same handmade grace. The world moves faster now, but the spirit of slow creation hasn't vanished. It's just changed clothes. Let's imagine for a moment those old artisans looking at us now. What would they think of electric lights, glowing screens, and machines that make in minutes what they once shaped by hand for weeks? Maybe they'd smile, a little puzzled but not upset, because they knew something about time that we often forget, that beauty doesn't live in how fast something is made, but in how much heart it holds. Haruko, the printmaker, would probably still be pressing her paper with that same gentle care, telling her apprentice, "The wood listens, even now." And Ayama, the weaver, would still be humming at her loom, watching her silk glow like water. Only now, perhaps her patterns would shimmer under electric light instead of a lantern's glow. There's a quiet comfort in knowing that nothing beautiful ever really disappears. It just changes form. The spirit of the Edo artisans lives not only in museums or dusty archives, but in the way people still take time to make things that last. A potter shaping a bowl, a writer choosing the right word, a baker arranging loaves in a window with care. All small acts, but all full of the same devotion that built Kyoto's golden streets. Sometimes at dusk, the city almost feels like it remembers. The rooftops catch the last gold of the day, and shadows stretch long across the old wooden lanes. You can almost see them, the silhouettes of weavers, carvers, and painters moving softly behind paper windows. The air hums with the same rhythm that's been here for centuries. Clack, shuf, clack, shuf. Maybe it's just the wind against the bamboo blinds, or maybe it's the sound of a loom, still weaving in some quiet corner of time.
One of Ayame's granddaughters, Hina, still lives in Nishijin. She runs a small studio now, part gallery, part classroom. She doesn't make full rolls of kimono silk anymore, but she teaches others to weave bookmarks and small tapestries using her grandmother's loom. When visitors ask why she keeps doing it, she just smiles and says, "Because I like the sound it makes. It feels like home." Sometimes, late at night, when everyone's gone, she weaves by herself under a single light. The thread slides softly through her fingers, and she feels, for just a moment, that her grandmother is sitting beside her again. In another part of Kyoto, a museum displays Haruko's prints, faded but still clear. The blue of her sky before rain hasn't lost its calmness. People stop to look, not realizing that what they're really seeing is not just ink and paper, but time itself, pressed gently between two worlds. A small note beside the print reads, "Unknown artist, 18th century, believed to have lived in the Edo district. Subject, mourning on the bridge." That's all. But in those few words lies a whole life. Countless mornings, hundreds of presses, years of ink-stained hands and quiet laughter shared over cups of tea. The night falls over Kyoto again, as it always has. The city lights flicker softly, like the old lanterns once did. If you stand on a quiet bridge and look down at the river, you'll see the reflections trembling, red, gold, and blue, as if the whole city were made of brushstrokes. Maybe, in a way, it still is. Every reflection, every sound, every ordinary moment carries a little of that same handmade grace. And so, the story of the Edo artisans never truly ends. It drifts on, in silk that catches the moonlight, in prints that smell faintly of ink and rain, in every person who still believes that slow work is sacred. Their legacy isn't in fame or fortune. It's in patience, in care, in the quiet belief that small things done well can last longer than any empire. The last light fades from the windows. The city sleeps again. And somewhere, in a quiet room in Nishijin, a single loom rests in the dark, thread still stretched, waiting for the morning. Tomorrow, someone will sit down, take a deep breath, and listen to the silk. And when the first thread moves, the world will remember again